I'd just gotten home from a 14-hour shift at County General, my scrubs still smelling like antiseptic and my feet screaming for relief, when I found 3 massive men in black tactical suits standing outside my apartment door. They were holding bright red moving boxes and checking their phones like they were confirming an address. "Excuse me," I said, keys in hand, trying to figure out why these intimidating strangers were blocking my door. "Can I help you?" The tallest one, built like he benched small cars for fun, with shoulders that barely fit through doorways, looked at me with the kind of cold assessment usually reserved for security threats. "You live here? Apartment 4B? "Yes, and you're blocking my door. So if you could move, we're moving someone in. The tenant has a lease starting today." He pulled out his phone, showed me a document that did indeed show apartment 4B, lease beginning today's date. "That's impossible. I have a lease. This is my apartment. There must be a mistake." "No mistake, ma'am. We verified the address 3 times. He gestured to the door. "You're going to need to let us in so we can start moving boxes." "I'm not letting strange armed men into my apartment based on a document on a phone. I need to call my landlord and figure out what's happening." Before I could pull out my phone, another man appeared from the neighboring doorway. Unlike the others, he wasn't carrying boxes. He was just there, and impossible to ignore. He was probably early 30s, tall and powerfully built, with dark hair and ink covering both arms, intricate tattoos that disappeared under his fitted black shirt. Sharp features. A jaw that looked carved from stone. He moved with the kind of lethal grace that suggested he was used to getting exactly what he wanted and used to handling anyone who got in his way. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. "Problem?" he asked, his voice deep and calm, with an edge that suggested problems didn't stay problems for long around him. "This woman says she lives here," the tall guard, Mason, I'd later learn, explained. "Claims there's been a mistake." The tattooed man turned his full attention to me. Dark eyes assessed me with unsettling precision. "You're Amelia Grant?" "Yes, and I live here. Have lived here for 2 years. So, whoever you are, you have the wrong apartment." "I'm Lorenzo Caruso, and I have a lease for apartment 4B, signed by the building's owner, starting today. If you also have a lease, then someone made an error, but that's not my problem. It's yours and the landlord's to sort out. You can't just move into an occupied apartment because you have a piece of paper. Actually, legally, I can. The lease is valid. You'll need to take up the double booking with your landlord." He nodded to his men. "Start moving boxes in. We're on a schedule." "No. You're not moving anything into my apartment." I positioned myself in front of the door, which was admittedly stupid, given that these men could easily move me aside. But I was exhausted, angry, and not thinking clearly. Lorenzo studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "Tyler, call the landlord. Get them on speakerphone. We'll sort this out now, rather than waste time arguing." While one of his guards made the call, I took the opportunity to really look at Lorenzo Caruso. He was attractive in a way that screamed danger, the kind of man who probably had women falling at his feet, but also probably had a dozen reasons you should run in the opposite direction. The expensive watch, the armed guards, the tattoos that looked less like fashion statements and more like stories written in ink, the casual assumption that he could just move into an occupied apartment. Everything screamed money, power, and trouble. "Mr. Chen, it's Tyler calling on behalf of Mr. Caruso regarding apartment 4B, the guard said into his phone. "There's a tenant here claiming the apartment is hers." "Yes, I'll put you on speaker." My landlord's voice came through, tiny but clear. "Amelia, is that you?" "Mr. Chen, what's going on? Why are there armed men trying to move into my apartment?" "Ah, Amelia, I tried to call you earlier, but it went to voicemail. There's been a situation. The building has been sold. New owner wanted to make some changes, including restructuring some of the leases. Your apartment was one that got reassigned." "Reassigned? What does that mean? You can't just kick me out. I'm not kicking you out. Your lease is still valid, but the apartment number has changed. You're now in 4C instead of 4B. 4C? That's the studio apartment, Mr. Chen. I have a one-bedroom. All my furniture, my life, everything is set up for a one-bedroom. You can't just move me to a studio. The new lease terms include a rent reduction to compensate for the smaller space. You'll be paying $400 less per month. I don't want to pay less for a smaller apartment. I want to keep my apartment that I've been living in for 2 years. I'm sorry, Amelia. The building sale and new lease terms were final as of last week. I sent you an email about it. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my emails. There it was, buried in my spam folder, sent a week ago. An email explaining the building sale, new management, lease restructuring. I'd never seen it because I'd been working 60-hour weeks and hadn't checked my spam in days. This isn't fair. I never agreed to this. Your original lease had a clause about changes due to building ownership transfer. I know this is inconvenient, but legally, everything is in order. Mr. Caruso's lease for 4B is valid. Your lease for 4C is valid. I've already had maintenance move your things to the new apartment. You moved my stuff without my permission? I tried to call you 3 times this morning. Like I said, it went to voicemail. Mr. Chen sounded tired and defensive. Look, I'm sorry this is happening, but my hands are tied. New ownership, new rules. You can accept the new apartment with reduced rent, or you can break your lease and find somewhere else. Those are your options. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw my phone at the wall. Instead, I just closed my eyes and tried to breathe. Fine, I'll take 4C, but Mr. Chen, this is absolutely unacceptable. We're going to have a serious conversation about tenant rights and proper notice. I understand you're upset. We can discuss this later. For now, your new keys are on the kitchen counter in 4C. He hung up. I turned to Lorenzo Caruso, who'd been watching this entire exchange with an expression that was either amusement or pity. I couldn't tell which. Congratulations! You got my apartment. I hope you're happy. I didn't get your apartment. I signed a lease for an available unit. If your landlord mishandled the situation, that's between you and him. I'm just moving into the apartment I legally rented. With armed guards and a moving team like you're some kind of... I stopped, really looking at the men surrounding him. Professional, alert, constantly scanning the surroundings. Who are you? What kind of person needs security like this just to move into an apartment? Someone who values safety and privacy. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have moving to do. I'm sure you want to check out your new apartment and make sure your belongings are intact. He was dismissing me, like I was an inconvenience he'd already dealt with and could now ignore. The arrogance made my anger flare even hotter. 4C is a studio. It's half the size of this apartment. If my things don't fit, if anything is damaged because your lease forced me into a smaller space, then you'll take it up with the landlord who's responsible for the move, not with me. I'm simply the new tenant of 4B. He nodded to his men. Let's get started. I want to be settled by tonight. They moved past me like I wasn't even there, carrying boxes into what used to be my apartment. I stood in the hallway, feeling violated and helpless, watching strangers invade my space. The apartment next door, 4C, had its door propped open. I walked in to find my furniture crammed into a space that was clearly too small. My bed took up most of the main room. My couch was pushed against one wall, my desk against another, barely leaving walking space. Boxes were stacked everywhere. This was a disaster, an absolute disaster. I spent the next 3 hours trying to organize the chaos. The studio apartment was maybe 400 square feet, a single room with a tiny kitchenette and a bathroom that was barely functional. My furniture from the one bedroom didn't fit. I'd have to get rid of half of it or pay for storage I couldn't afford. Around 8 p.m., exhausted and close to tears, I decided I needed air. I stepped into the hallway just as Lorenzo Caruso was leaving what used to be my apartment. He'd changed from the black shirt into a gray-fitted t-shirt that showed off a muscular build and even more of the tattoos covering his arms, and somehow looked even more intimidating in casual clothes. "Settling in okay?" he asked, like we were friendly neighbors rather than two people who'd just had a confrontation over living space. "No, my furniture doesn't fit. My kitchen stuff is still in boxes because there's no room for it, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to sleep on my couch because there's no way to access my bed with everything crammed in there. That's unfortunate. His expression didn't change. Sounds like you need a bigger apartment. I had a bigger apartment. Until you took it. I didn't take anything. I rented an available unit. He looked at me with those dark, unreadable eyes. You're angry at the wrong person, Amelia. 3 days passed in tense silence. I avoided Lorenzo in the hallway, ignored the sounds of him moving around next door, and tried to pretend my life hadn't been completely upended by a tattooed stranger with armed guards. Then, on Friday night, my key wouldn't turn in the lock. I jiggled it, twisted harder, nothing. Come on, I muttered, exhaustion making my hands shake. Another 14-hour shift. Another day of being too tired to fight with my landlord about the illegal lease situation. The key snapped. Half of it stayed in my hand. The other half remained jammed in the lock. No, 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 no. Problem? I turned to find Lorenzo standing in his doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He wore dark jeans and a white t-shirt that somehow made the tattoos on his arms look even more prominent. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes tracked the broken key in my hand. My lock's jammed. Key broke. I hated how defeated I sounded. I'll call maintenance. At 11 p.m. on a Friday? Good luck. He stepped back, opening his door wider. Come on, you can wait inside while you figure it out. I'm fine, Amelia. My name sounded different in his voice, softer. You're exhausted. You smell like hospital disinfectant, and you're about to sit in a hallway for 3 hours waiting for maintenance that won't come. Stop being stubborn. His apartment, my old apartment, looked completely different. Expensive leather furniture, minimalist decor. A laptop opened on the dining table, surrounded by papers that he quickly closed when I entered. Everything was clean, organized, and deliberate. Sit, he said, gesturing to the couch. I'll make coffee. You don't have to. I know. He moved to the kitchen, my old kitchen, with surprising ease, but I'm making it anyway. I sank onto the couch, too tired to argue. Lorenzo returned with 2 mugs, handed me one, and sat in the chair across from me, close enough to talk, far enough to not crowd. Long shift? 14 hours, 3 traumas, 2 codes, 1 family that threatened to sue because we wouldn't give their son narcotics. I took a sip. The coffee was perfect. You? Busy day. His lips quivered slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. Nothing life or death like yours. Something shifted in the space between us. Some invisible wall thinning. Thank you, I said quietly. For the coffee, for not being an asshole about the lock. I'm not always an asshole, Amelia. His dark eyes held mine. Just when people block my door. Despite everything, the apartment, the anger, the exhaustion, I almost smiled. Almost. I woke up on Lorenzo's couch with a blanket I didn't remember pulling over myself. Sunlight streamed through windows that used to be mine. The smell of coffee, real coffee, not the instant crap I'd been surviving on, drifted from the kitchen. Lorenzo sat at the dining table, papers spread out in front of him, phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in rapid Italian, his voice low and controlled, but there was an edge to it that made me stay quiet. When he hung up, he noticed me sitting up. Maintenance won't come until Monday, he said without preamble. Your landlord claims it's not an emergency. Of course he does, I rubbed my face. I'll figure something out. I have a better idea. Lorenzo stood, moved to the wall that separated our apartments, his apartment and my studio. He knocked on it twice. Hollow sound. This is a non-load-bearing wall. My contractor confirmed it yesterday. He turned to face me. We can open it up. Connect the 2 units. You get your space back, I get a bigger apartment, and we both avoid the landlord's incompetence. I stared at him. You want to combine our apartments? Temporarily. Until you find a better place, or until the lease situation gets resolved legally. His expression remained neutral. You're a nurse working 60-hour weeks. You can't live out of boxes in a 400 square foot studio. And he paused. I have the resources to make this work. Why would you do that? Because watching you try to fit a one-bedroom life into a studio is depressing. His mouth quivered slightly. And because you fell asleep mid-sentence last night, you're exhausted, Amelia. This helps both of us. I should have said no. I should have called a locksmith, found a hotel, figured out literally any other option. But I was tired. So tired. Fine, I heard myself say. But we need ground rules. Agreed. Separate spaces. I'm not invading your privacy. The living room and kitchen are shared. You take the bedroom in 4C, I keep the master in 4B. We split the main areas. And your security? I gestured vaguely. The armed guards? Mason, Tyler, and Holden won't be inside the apartment unless there's a threat. Lorenzo's eyes darkened slightly. They're necessary. You'll get used to them. I don't want to get used to armed guards, Lorenzo. Then you're living in the wrong apartment. He pulled out his phone. The contractor will be here Monday morning. We'll have the wall open by Monday night. The apartment construction took 6 hours. By Tuesday evening, my cramped studio had expanded into a strange, shared space. My bedroom opened into what was now our shared living room. Lorenzo's master suite remained separate. A closed door I never saw beyond. We existed in a careful orbit around each other. He made coffee every morning, always enough for two. I left post-it notes about groceries. He worked late at the dining table, papers and phone calls in Italian. I studied for my certification exam on the couch, pretending not to notice when he draped a blanket over me after I fell asleep. Domestic proximity intensified into something neither of us acknowledged. Something dangerous, something inevitable. It happened on a Thursday night. Lorenzo was out, some meeting he'd mentioned vaguely that morning. I was alone in the apartment, curled up on the couch with my certification study materials, half asleep after another long shift. The front door exploded inward. Not open. Exploded. 3 men in dark clothes stormed in before I could scream. One grabbed me, hand clamping over my mouth, arm locked around my waist like a steel band. Where is he? The man holding me hissed in my ear, breath hot against my face. Where's Caruso? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Don't lie. Another man, shorter, with a scar running down his neck, pulled out a gun, pointed it at my head. Call him. Now. My phone was on the coffee table. The scarred man grabbed it, shoved it at me. Call, or I put a bullet in your knee and we wait for him to come home to the sound of you screaming. My hands shook so violently I could barely unlock the screen. Before I could dial, the apartment door, what was left of it, slammed open again. Mason, Tyler, and Holden burst in with weapons drawn. Everything happened in seconds. Shouting, movement. The man holding me used me as a shield, backing toward the window. Tyler fired, not at him, at the ground near his feet. A warning. Let her go. Mason's voice was ice. Now. We just want Caruso. You have 3 seconds before I stop aiming at the floor. The man released me, shoved me forward. I stumbled, and Tyler caught me, pulled me behind him as Mason and Holden subdued the intruders with brutal efficiency. It was over before I understood it had begun. Lorenzo arrived 10 minutes later. I was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket Tyler had found, watching Mason zip-tie the 3 men who'd broken in. My hands still shook. My breath still came too fast. Then Lorenzo walked through the destroyed doorway. His eyes found me first, scanned me head to toe, checking for injuries with an intensity that made my chest tight. Then he looked at the intruders. Something in his expression turned lethal. Get them out, he said quietly to Mason. Too quietly. I'll deal with them later. Boss, out, now. Mason nodded. They dragged the 3 men into the hallway. Lorenzo crossed to me in 3 strides, knelt in front of the couch so we were eye level. Are you hurt? His hands hovered near my face, not quite touching. Did they hurt you? No, I'm okay. You're not okay. His voice cracked, actually cracked. They put a gun to your head because of me. Lorenzo, this is my fault. He finally touched me, hands cupping my face with devastating gentleness. I brought this to your door, my world, my enemies, and they almost... He stopped, jaw clenched, eyes bright with something that looked like fear. I'd never seen him afraid before. I'm okay, I whispered. You got here. Your guards got here. I'm okay. I can't... He closed his eyes. I can't let this happen again. His forehead pressed against mine, and just like that, every wall between us shattered. Lorenzo didn't move for a long moment, forehead still pressed against mine, hands still cradling my face like I was something fragile he was terrified of breaking. Then he pulled back, stood, ran a hand through his hair. You need to know who I am. His voice was rough. What I am. Lorenzo, my father is Dominic Caruso. He watched my face for recognition. He runs the Caruso family. Has for 30 years. Organized crime, protection rackets, legitimate businesses that aren't so legitimate. And I'm... He exhaled. I'm his heir. His successor. The word hit me like cold water. Mafia. Those men tonight, Lorenzo continued, they work for the Russo family, our biggest rival. They wanted to use you as leverage. To get to me. To get to my father. I should have been terrified. Should have run. Instead, I asked, does this happen often? He looked surprised by the question. Threats? Yes. Actual break-ins? Not usually. My security is better than this. His jaw tightened. I got careless. Let my guard down because I wanted you to feel safe here. And now? Now, you'll never be safe as long as you're near me. I stood from the couch, walked to where he stood by the destroyed doorway. Then I guess it's a good thing I'm a trauma nurse, I said quietly. I'm used to danger. Amelia, this isn't a joke. I know it's not. I met his eyes. You just told me you're Mafia royalty. That your enemies will target me. That staying here means I'm choosing a life of armed guards and threats and violence. I stepped closer. And I'm telling you I'm not leaving. You should. Probably. I reached for his hand. He let me take it. But I'm not. Why? The word came out broken, desperate, because when those men broke in, the first thing I thought was, I wish Lorenzo was here. My throat tightened. Because you make me coffee every morning. Because you put blankets over me when I fall asleep studying. Because when you looked at me tonight, you weren't worried about your reputation or your empire. You were terrified I'd been hurt. His fingers tightened around mine. This life will destroy you. Or maybe, I whispered, I'll save you from it. After that night, everything changed. Mason, Tyler, and Holden became permanent fixtures, one always stationed outside our door, another in the building lobby, the third rotating. Lorenzo taught me the security protocols, panic buttons, safe rooms, exit strategies. If someone comes for me, he explained one morning over coffee, you run. You don't fight. You don't negotiate. You run, and Mason will get you out. And leave you? Especially leave me. His dark eyes held mine. Promise me, Amelia. I didn't promise. Instead, I learned to recognize the dangerous cars that sometimes idled outside. The strangers who watched too long. The phone calls that made Lorenzo's expression go cold and distant. Danger became part of our daily life, but so did his hand finding mine across the couch. His quiet, stay safe, every morning before I left for my shift. The way he waited up when I worked late, pretending to read but really just listening for my key in the lock. We didn't talk about what we were becoming. We didn't have to. My father wants to meet you. Lorenzo said it casually over breakfast, but his shoulders were tense. His coffee sat untouched. When? Sunday dinner. The family estate. He looked at me carefully. You don't have to go. I can tell him I'll go. His eyes darkened with something between relief and worry. Amelia, my family isn't like... They're going to test you, push you, try to find weaknesses. I work in a trauma ward. I can handle difficult people. These aren't difficult people. His hand found mine across the table. These are dangerous people who will decide if you're an asset or a liability to the family. And liabilities. He didn't finish. I squeezed his hand. Then I'll make sure they see an asset. The Caruso estate was exactly what I expected. Sprawling mansion, iron gates, guards at every entrance. What I didn't expect was the woman who answered the door. She was beautiful, mid-50s, elegant, with Lorenzo's dark eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. So you're the nurse. Lorenzo's mother, Isabella, looked me over with surgical precision. The one living in my son's apartment? Yes, ma'am. Interesting. She stepped aside. Come, everyone's waiting. The dining room held 12 people. Lorenzo's father, Dominic, sat at the head of the table, silver-haired and commanding. His brothers and their wives. His sister, Gabriella, who watched me with open hostility. Sit, Dominic said. Not an invitation. A command. Dinner was an interrogation disguised as conversation. You're a nurse? Gabriella asked, voice dripping skepticism. How noble. Trauma surgery. County General. Long hours, I imagine. Difficult to maintain a relationship. I manage. And your family? Isabella cut in. What do they think about Lorenzo? I haven't told them yet. I met her eyes. I wanted to be sure first. Sure of what? Dominic's voice cut through the table chatter. My son or his situation? Everyone stopped eating. Lorenzo tensed beside me. Both, I said evenly. I don't make decisions lightly, Mr. Caruso, especially ones that involve armed guards and rival families breaking into my home. Silence. Then Dominic laughed. Actually, I laughed. She's got a spine, Lorenzo. I'll give her that. After dinner, Isabella cornered me in the hallway. You think you love him? I think I'm choosing him. That's more honest. Love in this family is a weapon, Amelia, used against you, used to control you. Her eyes hardened. Can you handle watching him come home bleeding? Can you bury the fear every time he leaves? Can you lie to your friends, your family, everyone about what he really is? Can you? I asked quietly. Something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe. I've been doing it for 30 years. She studied me. You're stronger than you look. Good. You'll need to be. I didn't win them over that night, but I didn't break either. As we left, Dominic pulled Lorenzo aside. I heard fragments. Strong enough. Liability becomes an asset. Protect her or end it. In the car, Lorenzo was quiet. You did well, he finally said. Did I pass? You survived. His hand found mine in the darkness. That's more than most. The call came at 2 a.m., Mason's voice tight with controlled panic. We're bringing him in. He's hurt. Bad. I was out of bed before he finished the sentence, my nursing instincts overriding the terror clawing at my chest. How bad? Gunshot. Left shoulder. He's conscious but losing blood fast. Bring him here. I'll prep this. The line went dead. I converted our dining table into a makeshift surgical station. Towels, my medical kit, sterilization supplies I'd started keeping after the break-in because some part of me had known this day would come. When they carried Lorenzo through the door, his shirt was soaked red. Put him on the table, now. My voice was pure clinical detachment, the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Lorenzo's eyes found mine, unfocused with pain. Amelia, don't talk. Mason, apply pressure here. Tyler, I need clean water, boiling. Holden, watch the door. The bullet had gone through. Clean exit wound. Lucky. I worked for 90 minutes, hands steady, even as my heart shattered with every pained breath Lorenzo took. You're going to be fine, I told him, threading sutures with practiced precision. But you're going to hurt like hell for weeks. Already. Do. His hand found my wrist. gripped weakly. I'm sorry. Save it for when you're not bleeding on my table. He healed, but something in me broke. 3 weeks after the shooting, after sleepless nights watching him breathe, after changing blood-soaked bandages and pretending I wasn't terrified every time he left the apartment, I finally snapped. I can't do this anymore. Lorenzo looked up from his laptop, shoulder still wrapped in bandages. Amelia, no. Listen to me. My voice shook. I watched you almost die on our dining table. I pulled a bullet out of your body while you bled everywhere. And tomorrow, you're going back to the same meeting, the same deals, the same war that put you there. This is my life. Then I can't be part of it. The words exploded out. I can't spend every night wondering if Mason's going to call saying you're dead. I can't keep pretending this is normal. I can't. I broke. Actually broke. Tears streaming down my face as months of fear finally surfaced. Lorenzo stood slowly, crossed to where I stood, pulled me against his chest with his good arm. Okay, he whispered into my hair. Okay. Okay, what? I'll change it. His voice was rough. The business, the family, all of it. I'll find a way out. It took 6 months. 6 months of Lorenzo meeting with lawyers, accountants, federal prosecutors willing to make deals. 6 months of Dominic fighting him at every family dinner. You're betraying everything we built, his father raged. I'm saving what matters, Lorenzo shot back, hand tight around mine under the table. This family has a choice, evolve or die. I'm choosing evolution. The Caruso empire began to shift. Slowly, painfully, illegal operations sold off or shut down. Legitimate businesses expanded. Money laundered clean through careful legal channels. Lorenzo transformed from Mafia heir into something else. Businessman, investor, philanthropist. It wasn't perfect. Some family members refused to follow. Some deals couldn't be unwound cleanly. But he tried. For me, he tried. One night, months into the transition, Lorenzo found me on the couch where this had all started. I met with the DA today, he said quietly. Full immunity in exchange for testimony about the Russo family operations. It's done. I'm out. I looked at him. This dangerous, tattooed man who'd stormed into my life with armed guards and moving boxes, who'd nearly died protecting his empire, who'd chosen me over everything he'd ever known. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He pulled me close. You asked me once if you could save me from this life. You did, Amelia. You already did. His lips found mine, and for the first time since that first night, I believed we might actually survive this, together. The wedding was small, not because Lorenzo couldn't afford something extravagant. The legitimate Caruso business empire had made him wealthier than ever, but because we both wanted something real, something of ours. Mason, Tyler, and Holden stood as groomsmen, no longer bodyguards, but friends who'd become family. My hospital colleagues filled the other half of the church, blissfully unaware of the carefully sanitized history behind the groom's last name. Dominic walked me down the aisle. Take care of my son, he whispered, before placing my hand in Lorenzo's. He was lost before you. Isabella cried. Actually, I cried. And when Lorenzo said, I do, his voice steady and sure, I saw the man he'd become. No longer the dangerous heir arriving with armed guards, but someone who'd chosen love over legacy, peace over power, someone who'd chosen me. We bought a house in the suburbs, real yard, white picket fence, the kind of normal I'd dreamed about during those early days crammed in the studio. Lorenzo converted his business interests entirely. Real estate development, tech investments, legitimate ventures that didn't require armed security or coded phone calls. Mason still checked in weekly. Old habits die hard, but mostly he complained about his girlfriend and asked for dating advice. I used to threaten people for you, he grumbled one afternoon. Now I'm asking relationship questions. How did this happen? You got soft, Lorenzo said, grinning. "You got soft first, boss." It was true. The hard edges had smoothed. The constant vigilance had eased. Lorenzo laughed more, slept better, existed without always calculating exits and threats. He'd built something new from the ashes of what he'd left behind. We both had. Our daughter was born on a Tuesday. Sophia Caruso came into the world screaming, with her father's dark eyes and my stubborn determination. Lorenzo held her with shaking hands, this man who'd once commanded criminal empires, reduced to tears by 8 pounds of perfect humanity. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's ours." 2 years later, our son arrived, Marco, named after Mason, who ugly cried in the hospital waiting room when we told him. Our life became beautifully, chaotically normal. Preschool pickups, birthday parties, family dinners, where the most dangerous thing was Isabella's pointed commentary about our parenting choices. 10 years after that first night, Lorenzo found me in our kitchen making coffee, his job once upon a time, back when we'd been strangers forced into proximity. "Remember when I showed up at your door with boxes and guards?" he asked, wrapping arms around me from behind. "How could I forget?" "You stole my apartment. I gave you a better one. You gave me hell for 6 months. Best 6 months of my life." He turned me to face him. "You know what I was thinking that night, when I first saw you in the hallway? That I was in your way? That you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, and that you looked at me like I was just a man, not a Caruso, not someone to fear or use or avoid." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "You saw me before you knew who I was. That's the moment I started falling. You had a terrible way of showing it. I was terrified." His voice dropped. "Of you. Of what you made me feel. Of what it would mean to let someone that close when everything about my life was designed to keep people at a distance." Sophia ran into the kitchen, Marco toddling behind her, both arguing about something involving crayons and territorial rights to the coffee table. This was our life now, beautiful chaos, ordinary struggles, the kind of problems that didn't involve bullets or blood or federal immunity deals. "Daddy, Marco scribbled on my drawing." "Did not. Did too." Lorenzo scooped up both children, one in each arm, and they shrieked with laughter as he spun them around. I watched this man, this dangerous, tattooed, former Mafia heir who'd arrived at my door with armed guards and moving boxes, be silly with our children, and my heart clenched with overwhelming love. That night, after the kids were asleep, we stood in the hallway outside what used to be apartment 4B and 4C. We'd bought the building years ago, kept the apartments as an investment property. The wall we'd knocked down was still gone. The space still connected. "Should we rent it out?" I asked. Lorenzo pulled me close. "No, let's keep it, as a reminder." "Of what?" "That the worst day of your life, the day some asshole showed up and took your apartment, became the best thing that ever happened to both of us." He was right. The moment Lorenzo Caruso appeared in my hallway, tattooed, dangerous, impossible, my carefully controlled life had shattered. And from those pieces, we'd built something extraordinary. A love story that started with "I'm your new roommate." A family forged through danger, choice, and the unwavering belief that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. "I love you," I whispered. "I love you," he answered. From that first night. Even when you wanted to kill me. Especially when I wanted to kill you. We laughed, standing in the hallway where it all began, 10 years and a lifetime ago. And I wouldn't change a single moment. Not the fear, not the danger, not the guards or the guns or the impossible choice between safety and love, because all of it, every terrifying, beautiful, chaotic moment, had led us here, home,